Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe from Detroit, week 252. Got my cup of Joe here. I mentioned a couple weeks ago that there are certain times where all the articles seem to fit together or weave together into a theme. There's other weeks, like this one, where there didn't feel like I'd have anything for the cup of Joe. But one of the people, there's really a couple of different people that I keep thinking about when I do this. One is, David Brooks, who talks a little bit about having to create a column and then write that column twice a week, every week. And sometimes you just have to crank it out, so to speak. And then the other person I think of is Bill Simmons, who's an ESPN columnist. He kind of has his own media company now with podcasts and articles and stuff. That's not important. The important thing is he talks a little bit about just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. And that's one of the things with the Cup of Joe that I've gotten to try different things. I've gotten to try video, I've gotten to try different themes. And sometimes I worry that the themes are too all over the place, that it's hard for, people to understand the how the points fit together in my head or how everything fits together in my worldview because it seems to be all over from leadership to tech to business, sometimes politics, sometimes culture. All this philosophy gets in there. And so I'm aware of that and I'm trying to think through how the video has changed things, what needs to happen in the future, what should, we're coming up on 5 years in in May. So thinking through what should change, needs to change. It's just been fun, and so I keep doing it. But I also keep doing it because you just keep doing it to learn these things, and I just have to put it out there each week. And I think, one of the biggest themes. There have been a couple things that have emerged, right? The answer well, thought process, decision making, approach, strategy, and we'll talk about that. That's one of the three things I want to talk about today. The next belt, rebranding, whether you call it the former Rust Belt or the Rust Belt, but rebranding these authentic value cities like Detroit and Cleveland and Cincinnati, Louisville, Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, where there's so much history and character. And I'm going to talk a little bit about innovation today. And then the third thing is this concept I'm mentioning now of this general view on a bunch of different things, how innovation ties together ideas from different industries or totally unrelated ideas, and pieces of those ideas come together to create the new idea, to create the innovation. And that process can be tough in a world that wants to say this subject matter expertise is deep and I can put a label on it, I can put a category on it. So I know you are an expert in X or in Y. And a generalist, it's hard to put in a box. It's hard to say, well, strategy, a strategic thinker or a big thinker or a creative thinker, where do you fit? Either where do you fit in the organization if you're a leader and you're thinking through your company, if you're an entrepreneur and you're building a company, or just on a day-to-day basis, where is this idea coming from? Sometimes where the idea comes from is as important as the idea itself. And so, CEOs strike me as a really interesting conundrum because CEOs tend, at least historically, to come from the expert at the top of a vertical, right? So you become a CFO, and CFO is a path to CEO. I think probably the second most common way would be sales. So you rise through, you're the top revenue generating, top revenue officer in the company, you become CEO. But as soon as you become CEO, day one, you have to be a generalist. All of a sudden, it's legal and PR, HR, technology, research and development, all of these different areas, marketing, sales, and finance, of course. But the concept that we just immediately take someone who's a subject matter expert in their career spent in a vertical and then ask them to be a CEO is interesting because a lot of the high profile CEOs have a much more winding road, have diverse experience, have all this different experience. So Jamie Dimon always comes to mind for me in terms of, the path. But I want to talk a little bit more about the path in a second. But this concept of whether we will see different sets of experiences generating the opportunity to lead in a world where there's so much regulation, there's so much law or really specificity around data privacy, customer security, team member security, and client security. There's public relations and HR issues that are very sensitive and very important. We talk, on the Saturday Cup of Joe, I talk a lot about racial equity and racial justice, and CEOs being well versed, ready, able, comfortable navigating really complex, hard issues around equity and equality and diversity. So, how are we seeing different types of approaches? There are famous rotation programs like the GE rotation program where leading different parts of the organization should give you diverse set of experiences around leading in general or what the organization does. But then there's also kind of within the business, not just leading different types of businesses, but within the business, getting experience from legal and HR and finance kind of along the way. Something I think there's more there. One of the things, I've picked up this week, CEOs thinking about burnout. And somebody sent me a Harvard Business Review series. They're doing this in 2021 around burnout for obvious reasons, because we're all getting surveys and we're getting toolkits because companies are thinking about this. And there's a list. I'll put it in the post, but there's a list of the different things that contribute to burnout. So lack of control, tying level of effort to reward or response or recognition, because I think people are putting in a lot more energy and time being tied to their homes and their home computer, their desktop or laptop or phone, feeling like there should be more that comes of it than your typical workday. And when there isn't, what happens next? I also think a lot about the distance, between the emergency or the perceived emergency in your office or at your team and how we reacted to it when we were all together in a workspace, in a room, responding and kind of get energy feeds on itself. The emergency becomes like way more interesting or much more of a perceived emergency, and now with some distance we're able to say, was that really an emergency? Are we responding the right way? And I think a lot of teams are able to respond with a little bit more measurement, thoughtfulness, than when teams are together whipping each other up. Not maybe into a frenzy is a bit a bit much, but from home, the downside is with the distance, you get some ability to respond in maybe a more thoughtful manner, but you're also available. Everybody knows that your laptop's right there, your phone's right there. It can be really hard to, even on a walk, you still have your phone. Whereas maybe if you took a lunch break, it would be harder to bother you because everybody would know you're on a lunch break in the office. Now your lunch break, is it at the same time? Can anyone see you're gone? And so they're reaching out to you even though you're trying to do the right thing to avoid burnout. So a lot there. Obviously, this is a really hard circumstance and not going to solve it on the Saturday Cup of Joe, but I wanted to add some of the articles and resources around there. But the question of how Answer Well relates to this, or how this generalist versus subject matter expert came up again, is one where what defines a CEO and how you handle some of these big questions. One of the things I think a lot about is how leaders will say, be the CEO of your business. Think with a mindset that you own your area, your slice of the company. And for sure, one of the repeating themes I've found in the Saturday Cup of Joe is that CEOs define the top characteristic of what they're looking for in leaders to be curiosity. You've seen it called a lifelong learner or curiosity. And so I found this other article I'll link to about creating luck, creating your own luck. My dad and I like to say, you know, creating more surface area by which luck can stick. That's something I got from the Tim Ferriss podcast, and I've used it a lot. But the piece here is more around how we think about a serendipitous mindset or how we see opportunities and then take action. And for the most part, it is a positive approach. It is a curiosity. It is two people seeing the exact same opportunity and one approaching it as luck and the ability to take action and make something happen, and another one passing right by and not even recognizing the opportunity. And how you approach that can really make a big difference. How you see bridges between gaps and opportunities is something that can change your career. It can have an entirely different outcome in the exact same facts, in the exact same circumstance, depending on how you approach that mindset. And so, that kind of feeds into my answer well question this week around the career. We have strategies for all kinds of different things. Like we have strategies for investments, our personal investments. We have strategies for diet and exercise. You have strategies for your projects at work, for your team, for the companies you're building and leading. Do you have a strategy for yourself? If you're an entrepreneur, your strategy is easy. It's the company. You've aligned your own personal strategy with the company. But for those not yet starting companies, not yet in control of their careers in that way, and maybe growing professionally, looking for the next opportunity, do you have a short term, mid-term, and long term strategy the same way you would for other parts of your life? I think many of us rely more on this an opportunity presenting itself. But depending on what your mindset is, according to this article, those serendipitous moments might pass you by if you're not approaching them with that curiosity, that optimism, and a proactive strategy, which is kind of, answering well to the next challenge. One of my friends, Brian Thompson, I've definitely put this in the cup of Joe 2 or 3 times, but it never hurts to repeat. My friend in Connecticut, Brian Thompson, shout out Brian, used to say, or he said to me once, and it stuck with me, if you love rock climbing, if rock climbing is your passion, it's the thing you want to do, it's really what fires you up, you have two choices. You can find a way to get paid to be a rock climber or in and around rock climbing, or you can find a job that enables the flexibility to rock climb as you see fit, as you wish. And I think there's probably a third that's unspoken, and that is, or you can not do that and be miserable because you're not rock climbing and you wish you were. But we don't talk about that third one, Brian and I, because we're focused on the next thing and pushing and pursuing towards the solution to the passion, to what we want. So assuming that you're not going to do the miserable path, that mindset of I can either get paid to do this, or I can find a job that offers that flexibility is the start of this strategy. It's the start of saying, am I going to be a subject matter expert? Am I going to be a generalist? How am I going to navigate, you know, the next thing that happens, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a job change, whether it's a job being eliminated, all of these things that the pandemic has forced us to talk about are related to the future. A lot of them are about our health and safety and how you respond to those, and do you answer well to those challenges in a diverse community that needs everybody participating in the best way for the economy, for our safety? Or are you thinking about it as threats to your business, threats to your job? And if that's the case, how do we think about innovation? How do we think about what we can create, what we can incentivize? So, one of the books I'm listening to on Audible, I like to say I'm reading it, but I think it's more accurate to say I'm listening to it on Audible. It's called The New Geography of Jobs by Enrico Moretti. This was recommended to me by a friend. Thank you, John, another John. That really looks at job creation, incentives, and what I'm only about halfway through, so this could change, but what we can do when we create opportunities, companies, innovation, research and development to create more jobs around it, right? So manufacturing has largely moved, and let's take consumer product manufacturing, moved to China. High-end technical manufacturing, however, stayed right here. And we're doing as much high-end technical manufacturing in the US as China. It's really a one for one. It's about the same. So where we lost consumer product manufacturing, we've retained research and development, innovation, high-end tech, very specialized. So things designed, things thought up in California are produced and made elsewhere. But the design part is still here. What if that starts to move too? What if we're starting to outsource research and development or innovation to other places? Then what? And these are all really important questions. I think they're important questions because we're also watching, politicos fight over how they frame up and what the talking points are on this COVID relief bill. And one side of the aisle saying, well, this is, government wasteful spending, and the other side of the aisle saying this is going to exactly the people who need it at exactly the right time. And really the question is not the meaningless or uselessness of a Twitter conversation. The question is what places are taking action to invest in innovation, to invest in incentives, to create environments where the types of ideas that flourish cannot be replicated, cannot be outsourced. And how are you building so that your company or your region becomes a magnet, and thinking about the future and speaking about it like the future is really important. So it gets me excited because in the next belt conversation, places like Detroit, Cleveland, Pittsburgh have a good mix of ways to attract people, whether that's nearby universities that are producing really thoughtful, high end, skilled folks, whether it's transportation and the ease of use of being in the middle of the country and getting to rail. In Detroit, you can take the train to Toronto. You can jump on an airport, an airplane, and jump on an airport. You jump on an airplane and be anywhere very easily because Detroit has a world-class airport. You have the ability to work and live anywhere now. Uh, Maybe not anywhere, but more so than ever before. And I think the pandemic's going to increase the incentives to try different hubs, try different working arrangements or ways to recruit talent, ways to attract talent. But fundamentally, what we're talking about is how to put a greater emphasis on what we're building and why. There was a great article which I will link to, some of the economic development leaders here in Detroit wrote about creating a focus, an incentive on the people. Make the people of Detroit so attractive that it brings in new ideas, new companies, new entrepreneurs, new investment to fuel what's happening here. I think that's a fascinating way to think about it. So I'll definitely link to that. But then the other way to think about it is certain types of jobs create a multiplier effect. So where a manufacturing job may create one job, a software or innovation or design job may create three or four. And one of the reasons is if these are higher paid employees, higher paid talent, then the software developer who is working all day on his or her highly skilled software job then has other subcontractors, service contractors, service related and local jobs that pop up to handle that influx of people. So a software job might create four jobs in the community. And so when we're attracting that talent, it's really important to think through the global effect. And they talk a little bit in the book, The New Geography of Jobs, about Facebook and how many other jobs Facebook created by creating jobs. It's just one of those things where I could go on and on all day, but it's big picture, it's general. So this week, as I put this out, I'm thinking a lot about the new geography of jobs, innovation, leadership, and how we're handling burnout, how we're handling strategies around our own career. If you have any thoughts on any of that, please reach out to me. If you've seen a recent article that I should be including or thinking about, please reach out to me. And thank you for spending some time this weekend. Whether it's Saturday or Sunday, it's still the Saturday Cup of Joe. Have a great day. Have a great week. See you next time.